One day, this police officer was going about his duty on a normal sunny morning. He noticed it on the road. Just then, he turned around, and what he saw made his heart race. In a small town called Meadowbrook, there was a stray puppy named Charlie. With his floppy ears and sad, longing eyes, Charlie roamed the streets, searching for warmth, love, and a place to call home. He had faced many challenges in his short life, but he never lost hope. Officer Jackson, a good-natured man who served the community of Meadowbrook as a police officer, was performing his regular patrol duty one bright and sunny afternoon. While he navigated the city streets in his car, his observant eyes combed the area for any indication of danger or distress. He remained on the lookout at all times. Officer Jackson came across Charlie, a scruffy little puppy, while he was out on one of these patrols near the park. Charlie was lost and wandering around. Officer Jackson felt an overwhelming sense of compassion for the young dog in an instant. He was well aware that the streets may be a perilous environment for a stray animal, particularly one who appeared to be as defenseless as Charlie did. With genuine concern, Officer Jackson parked his patrol car at a safe distance and approached Charlie cautiously. He understood the importance of not startling the timid pup, aware that sudden movements or loud noises could cause him to run away in fear. "Hey there, little buddy," Officer Jackson called out gently, his voice laced with warmth and kindness. He wanted to convey to Charlie that he meant no harm. Slowly, he took deliberate steps towards the puppy, making sure to maintain a non-threatening posture. Charlie, whose scruffy fur was matted and filthy, turned his head to look directly into the eyes of Officer Jackson. His eyes seemed to be filled with a mixture of fear and longing, as if he couldn't quite believe someone was actually concerned for him. His tail made a feeble thumping sound against the ground, which alluded to his reluctant acceptance of the situation. Officer Jackson knelt down, his movements deliberate and calm. He extended his hand towards Charlie, allowing the puppy to sniff it to gauge whether he could trust this stranger who had approached him with such gentleness. Officer Jackson knew that building trust with a stray dog required patience and empathy. As Charlie cautiously approached, sniffing Officer Jackson's hand, the officer's heart swelled with compassion. He could see that the pup had endured hardships, his fur matted and dirty, his body thin. Officer Jackson's determination to help Charlie grew stronger with each passing second. "Are you lost, little buddy?" Officer Jackson asked in a soft, soothing tone. He wanted to convey his willingness to assist and protect the pup. His eyes met Charlie's, their connection forming in that vulnerable moment. Charlie's tail made a feeble thumping sound against the ground, which was an indication that he was gradually relaxing his guard. It was almost as if he could perceive Officer Jackson's real concern, and he experienced a spark of hope that he had, at long last, discovered someone who cared about him. "Come on, little one, let's get you to safety," Officer Jackson said soothingly, his voice laced with empathy. He carefully scooped Charlie up into his arms, feeling the pup's trembling body against his chest. The officer's heart melted at the vulnerability and innocence displayed by the stray. Officer Jackson reflected about Charlie's situation as he led the puppy to his patrol cruiser, while at the same time carrying him. How did Charlie get to this point where he was all by himself and ignored? He was well aware that it was his responsibility to look out for the interests of the community as a whole, and that this responsibility extended to the well-being of the animals who lived on the streets. Once inside the car, Officer Jackson gently placed Charlie on the passenger seat, securing him with a makeshift seatbelt. He turned off the sirens and the flashing lights, opting for a peaceful drive to the local animal shelter. Along the way, he couldn't help but glance at the pup from time to time, offering reassuring words and gentle pats. As they embarked on the journey to the animal shelter, Officer Jackson couldn't help but marvel at the resilience and trust Charlie had shown. He knew that his encounter with the stray puppy was no coincidence. It was a moment that would change both of their lives forever. Little did Officer Jackson know that Charlie's presence would bring him immeasurable joy and companionship, reminding him of the power of love and second chances. Arriving at the shelter, Officer Jackson carried Charlie inside. The air was filled with a mixture of animal sounds and the faint scent of disinfectant. The staff greeted Officer Jackson with familiarity, knowing him as a regular visitor who often brought in strays he found during his patrols. Officer Jackson took the time to brief the employees at the shelter on Charlie's predicament and voiced his concern for the canine's health. The staff nodded in understanding and sympathy as they saw the connection that had already developed between the officer and the stray animal. They gave Officer Jackson their word that Charlie would receive the appropriate care, medical treatment, and the opportunity to find a home where he would be loved. Reluctantly, Officer Jackson handed Charlie over to the shelter staff. He watched as they placed the puppy in a clean, comfortable kennel, their gentle touch conveying compassion. As he walked away, a heavy feeling settled in Officer Jackson's chest. He couldn't shake off the nagging doubt that he might never see Charlie again, and the puppy would be just another forgotten face in the shelter. Days turned into nights and nights into days. Officer Jackson's mind often returned to Charlie, and he pondered the question of whether or not the puppy had been adopted. During his time off, he would frequently go to the shelter in the vain hope of catching a glimpse of Charlie or finding out any fresh information regarding his condition. Each visit to the shelter filled Officer Jackson's heart with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. He would walk past the rows of kennels, searching for Charlie's familiar face among the wagging tails and hopeful eyes. Sometimes he would stop and spend a few minutes with the other dogs, offering them a kind word or a gentle pat, but his mind was always on Charlie. During one of these visits, Officer Jackson was greeted at the shelter's reception desk by a person he had seen there before. When Charlie arrived at the shelter for the first time, one of the staff members named Lisa was the one who took care of him. "Officer Jackson, it's good to see you," Lisa said, smiling warmly. "I have some news about Charlie. Would you like to hear it?" Hope flickered in Officer Jackson's eyes as he nodded eagerly. "Please, tell me everything." Lisa led Officer Jackson to a quiet corner of the shelter, away from the hustle and bustle. She recounted how Charlie had been adjusting to life at the shelter, his playful antics with the other dogs, and the attention he garnered from potential adopters. However, Lisa's words held a touch of sadness. "I don't deny that Charlie has been getting a fair share of interest from potential adopters," Lisa explained gently. "But there's something about him that makes him hesitant to fully connect with anyone. It's as if he's waiting for something or someone special." Officer Jackson's heart sank at the news. He knew deep down that he was that special someone Charlie was waiting for. Without hesitation, he looked at Lisa and said, "I've made up my mind. I want to take Charlie home with me." Lisa's eyes sparkled with understanding and approval. "I believe that's what Charlie has been hoping for all along." As Officer Jackson accompanied Lisa to Charlie's kennel, he couldn't help but feel a wave of excitement race through his veins. As soon as Charlie saw Officer Jackson, his tail started wagging wildly, and his eyes lit up with a mixture of excitement and amazement. It was almost as if the dog was aware that the answers to his prayers had been provided for him. With the necessary paperwork completed and Charlie's belongings gathered, Officer Jackson embraced his newfound responsibility. Charlie bounded beside him, ready to embark on a new chapter of his life, one filled with love, security, and the warmth of a true home. As they arrived at Officer Jackson's house, Charlie explored every nook and cranny, sniffing curiously and leaving tiny paw prints on the freshly cleaned floors. Officer Jackson smiled, his heart swelling with contentment. The days that followed resulted in Officer Jackson and Charlie developing an unbreakable friendship between the two of them. Even though the officer's commitment to his job had not changed, he was now assisted in his duties by a trustworthy colleague. After working long shifts that left Officer Jackson exhausted, Charlie would always be ready with a wagging tail and moist kisses to remind him of the love and joy that filled their home. This provided Officer Jackson great solace. Here we come to the end of our video. Please like, share, subscribe, and hit on the notification bell for more such videos. Thanks for watching.